The man I married never ran anywhere except toward the things he loved. That was the first morning. September, early enough that the streetlights were still on when I heard the front door close. I was awake because I'm always awake at 5:47 a.m. 12 years of nursing shifts will rewire your circadian rhythm until your body becomes its own alarm clock. The house made its familiar settling sounds, the refrigerator's low hum, the creak of the third stair, the way the front door catches if you don't pull it hard enough. But this morning added something new, the soft slap of running shoes on pavement fading into distance. When he came back 40 minutes later, his face was flushed and his breathing still hadn't quite settled. He stood in the kitchen doorway, one hand pressed to the doorframe, the other holding his phone. Sweat darkened the collar of a gray running shirt I'd never seen before. "Didn't know you were awake," he said. "Always am." He nodded, filled a glass with water from the tap, drank it without sitting down. "Thought I'd try something new, clear my head before work." I was pouring coffee into the blue mug he always used, the one with the chipped handle that neither of us ever replaced. "Since when do you run?" "Since now, I guess." He smiled, the same smile that once made me certain of things. "Feel like I need to move more. You know how it is." I didn't, actually. David had always been a person of stillness. Weekend mornings spent reading the paper in bed, evenings on the couch with his laptop balanced on his knees. His idea of exercise limited to walking from the hospital parking garage to his office. He was a physical therapist who never seemed to apply his professional wisdom to himself. I'd long ago accepted this as one of marriage's small ironies, the way people contain contradictions that you stop noticing after enough years. "Good for you," I said, and I meant it. I slid the coffee across the counter. He picked it up with both hands, the way he always did, like he was warming himself against morning cold that wasn't really there. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. The running continued. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., the front door would close, and I would lie in bed listening to his footsteps recede into the pre-dawn quiet. By the time I came downstairs, he'd be in the shower, the bathroom mirror fogged with steam, his phone face down on the kitchen counter beside a half-empty water bottle. Within 2 weeks, it became routine. We are creatures of pattern, and new rituals layer themselves over old ones until you can't remember which came first. The running shoes appeared by the front door every night, laces loosened, ready. A foam roller materialized in the living room corner. He started setting out his running clothes the night before, shirt, shorts, the expensive moisture-wicking socks I'd given him last Christmas still in their packaging until now. "You're really committed to this," I said one evening while folding laundry on the bed. His running shirt was in my hands, the fabric stiff with dried sweat. "Helps with work stress." He was sitting against the headboard, scrolling through his phone. "Gives me time to think." "How far are you going?" 5 miles usually, sometimes 6. That's a lot for someone who just started. He looked up, and for just a moment something flickered across his face. Not guilt, not yet, but a kind of careful attention that made me aware I'd said something that required management. "Built up gradually. You know I know how to do it right." He wasn't wrong. He'd spent 15 years teaching people how to strengthen damaged bodies, how to move through pain without creating more. If anyone understood progression and rest and the architecture of endurance, it was David. I went back to folding, his socks mine, the pillowcases that never quite matched anymore, the small domestic archaeology that makes up a shared life. By October, he was posting about it. Screenshots of his running app appeared on his Instagram, neat maps of routes that looked like careful loops through our neighborhood, accompanied by captions about personal records and sunrise perspectives. 5.2 moles. New PR. Feeling strong. Early morning clarity hits different. Miles don't lie. His friends commented with fire emojis and encouragement. My sister liked every post. His coworkers from the hospital called him an inspiration. I watched from my own account, feeling oddly distant from this version of my husband who had suddenly become someone who documented his discipline for public consumption. "You're really into the social media thing," I said one night while we were getting ready for bed. "It's motivating." He was setting his alarm, his phone bright in the dark room. "Keeps me accountable." "To who?" "To myself, I guess. To the routine." I didn't ask why he needed accountability for something he'd chosen freely. Marriage teaches you when to let questions dissolve unanswered. The fitness app was something we'd both downloaded years ago during a brief period when we thought we'd train for a 5K together. We never did. I'd used it maybe twice for walks around the neighborhood before forgetting it existed, but it was still there on my phone, logged in, connected to his account through the family sharing feature we'd set up and never thought about again. I found it by accident. It was early November, a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on the couch waiting for the pizza to arrive, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, while David was upstairs in the shower. My thumb landed on the app icon, that bright green circle I'd ignored for so long, and it opened to a screen showing recent activity. His activity. I didn't think I was looking for anything. I was just bored, killing time, vaguely curious about how far he'd really been running. The app showed his recent routes as thin colored lines traced over satellite maps of our neighborhood. I tapped on this morning's run. The route appeared, a neat path starting from our house, heading east on Ashland, then north on Crawford, then a long stretch on Miller Avenue before looping back. 5.3 miles. Average pace, 8:42 per mile. Total time, 45 minutes, 54 seconds. It matched the screenshot he'd posted on Instagram that afternoon. I swiped to yesterday's run. The line was different. Same starting point, same general direction, but this path extended further north before ending in a small cluster of turns near Riverside Park. 5.8 miles. No Instagram post about this one. I went back further. Last Friday, last Tuesday, the previous Monday. The routes were never the same. Some matched his social media posts. Those neat, symmetrical loops that looked like someone taking running seriously. But just as many looked irregular, unfinished, ending at points that made no geographical sense for a training run. They stopped at intersections, mid-block, in parking lots. They lingered at addresses I didn't recognize. I zoomed in on the most recent irregular route, the one from 3 days ago. The path ended at an apartment complex I'd driven past 100 times without ever really seeing. The Willows, one of those newer developments with too much stucco and aspirational landscaping. My heart was beating faster now, a rhythm I recognized from work, the way your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up. The same quickening I felt when a patient's vitals started sliding in the wrong direction, when the monitor showed arrhythmia before the alarms even sounded. I heard the shower shut off upstairs. The old pipes groaned. I closed the app, set my phone face down on my lap, and tried to remember how to breathe, like someone who hadn't just discovered anything at all. The next morning, I was awake before his alarm. I lay in bed listening to him move through the pre-dawn routine, alarm, bathroom, kitchen, the rustle of clothes pulled from the chair where he'd left them. The front door closed at 5:44 a.m. I got up, walked downstairs in the dark, and opened the app on my phone. The green dot that represented him was already moving east on Ashland. I watched it travel north on Crawford. I watched it run along Miller Avenue. Then I watched it turn left, away from his usual loop, heading toward Riverside Park, toward the Willows. The dot moved at a steady pace, 8-minute miles, 9-minute miles, the rhythm of someone running with purpose. Then it slowed. Then it stopped. The timestamp showed 6:23 a.m. The location showed Building C, the Willows Apartments, 28 and 47 Riverside Drive. I stood in our kitchen, the November darkness pressing against the windows, watching a green dot sit motionless at an address I'd never visited. It stayed there for 7 minutes. Then it started moving again, slower now, taking a different route home. He came through the door at 7:02 a.m., breathing hard, face flushed. "Good run?" I asked. I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee that had gone cold. "Yeah." He filled his water bottle from the tap. "Pushed myself today." "How far?" 6.5 miles. Felt good. According to the app, he'd run 5.1 miles. The rest was standing still. I didn't sleep well that night, or the night after. I'd lie beside him listening to his breathing settle into the deep rhythm of sleep while my mind mapped and remapped those routes, calculating distances, counting the mornings he'd said 6 miles when the app showed 5, trying to remember which runs had matched his Instagram posts and which ones had veered off into territories he hadn't photographed. At work, I moved through my shifts with the mechanical precision of someone whose body knows its job well enough that the mind can wander. I checked vitals, started IVs, documented symptoms, spoke to patients with practiced kindness while some other part of me was zooming in on satellite maps, measuring the distance between our house and Building C, 1.8 miles. An easy run. An easy lie. I could have asked him. Every day I came close. The question formed itself in different versions. Where do you actually run? Or maybe, who lives at the Willows? Or possibly just, please tell me I'm wrong. But I didn't ask. Because asking meant knowing, and knowing meant deciding, and deciding meant destroying the careful architecture we'd built over 14 years of marriage. The routines, the easy silences, the way he still made coffee, exactly how I liked it, the way I still folded his clothes from the dryer while they were warm. Instead, I watched. The app became a window into a life running parallel to ours. Some mornings he ran his Instagram routes, the loops, the respectable distances, the times that made sense. These were the runs he documented, the ones his coworkers liked and commented on. But twice a week, sometimes 3 times, the green dot would drift north, slow down, stop at Building C for anywhere between 6 and 12 minutes before resuming its journey home at a pace that suggested walking, not running. I started recognizing the pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always. Sometimes Saturdays. The days he said he was building endurance or working on speed. The mornings he came home slightly less sweaty, his breathing slightly less labored, his smile slightly wider when I asked how it went. One evening in late November, I drove to the Willows. I told David I was going to the grocery store. I drove there first, bought items we didn't need, bread, milk, bananas, then took the long way home that happened to pass by Riverside Drive. The complex was unremarkable. 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard, balconies facing inward, the kind of place young professionals rent before they buy houses. I drove slowly past Building C, reading the numbers on the doors I could see from the street. 201, 203, 205. I didn't know which apartment. I didn't know if knowing would make anything better or worse. A woman was walking out to her car, mid-30s, blonde, carrying a gym bag. She looked up as I drove past. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. She smiled politely, the reflexive acknowledgement strangers offer each other in parking lots. I drove home, put away groceries I didn't need, made dinner with hands that seemed to belong to someone else. December arrived with the kind of cold that makes everything brittle. The trees were skeletal against gray skies. David kept running. I stopped looking at the app every day. It felt like picking at a wound, and I was too tired to keep bleeding in private. But some mornings I couldn't help it. I'd open it while drinking coffee, watch the green dot make its journey, see where it stopped, and for how long. On a Thursday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas, I opened the app and watched him run his usual route toward the Willows. The dot stopped at Building C at 6:19 a.m. At 6:34 a.m., it was still there. At 6:41 a.m., still there. At 6:47 a.m., still there. 15 minutes, then 20, then 28. The longest stop yet. I set my phone down, picked it up, set it down again. When he came home at 7:38 a.m., his face was flushed in a way that didn't look like exercise. His hair was damp, but not from sweat. His shoes were clean. Long run? I asked. Yeah, he didn't meet my eyes. Stopped to stretch. Calf was tight. For 28 minutes, in December, in the cold. You should ice it. I will. He went upstairs. The shower ran for a long time. I told myself I'd wait until after Christmas. I told myself I needed to be sure. I told myself a lot of things that let me keep pretending that uncertainty was kinder than knowledge. But on the morning of December 23rd, he left his phone on the kitchen counter. He'd gone upstairs to change out of his running clothes. I heard the bedroom door close, the shower start. His phone was there, face down, still unlocked from whatever he'd been looking at before he came inside. I picked it up. His text messages were open. The most recent conversation was with a contact saved simply as J. The messages went back months. September, August, further. I scrolled. Loved this morning. Me too, can't wait until Thursday. Same, counting down. Your PR was impressive. Coming from you, that means everything. The messages were brief, frequent, casual in the way that intimacy makes itself comfortable. Inside jokes about routes and weather. Photos of sunrise that looked taken from angles I didn't recognize. Conversations about music and podcasts and the way the city looked different in early light. I scrolled further back, July, June, May. A message from May 17th. I've been thinking about you all day, response. Haven't stopped thinking about you since Saturday, May. He'd started running in September, but this had started before the shoes by the door, before the sunrise discipline, before the Instagram posts, and the careful maps and the routine that had rebuilt our mornings around his absence. The shower was still running upstairs. I scrolled to the very first message between them. March 14th, 2023. Really enjoyed talking today. Same time next week? Definitely. You're going to crush that half marathon. She was his client. Or had been. Someone he'd met through work, someone healing an injury, someone who'd needed his professional knowledge about how to rebuild strength. And somewhere between March and May, between treatment plans and progress notes and the careful attention he was trained to provide, something had shifted, strengthened, become something else entirely. I heard the shower shut off. I put his phone back exactly where he'd left it, screen down, and walked out of the kitchen. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was steady. I felt nothing and everything, the way you do when your body goes into shock. That strange calm that arrives when the worst thing has finally happened and there's nothing left to brace against. We made it through Christmas. We exchanged gifts. His sister and her kids came over. We drank wine and played board games and took photos that would later appear on his Instagram with captions about gratitude and family and the importance of presence. I watched him across the living room, laughing at something his nephew said, and tried to reconcile the man I was seeing with the man whose text messages I'd read. They were the same person. That was the part that made it unbearable. Not that he'd become someone else, but that he'd remained exactly who I knew while building a completely separate world I wasn't part of. On the evening of December 27th, after his sister left, after the house was clean and quiet again, I asked him to sit down. We were in the living room. He took the armchair. I sat on the couch, the same couch where I'd accidentally opened the fitness app 2 months ago, when I still thought the worst thing I might discover was that he was lying about his mileage. I know, I said, 2 words. They hung in the air between us like something physical. He didn't ask what I knew. He didn't pretend confusion. He just closed his eyes and nodded slowly, the way you do when you've been waiting for something terrible and it's finally arrived. How long have you known? His voice was quiet. November. And you didn't say anything. I thought about it every day. I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I thought about a lot of things. The silence stretched. Outside, a car drove past. Someone's dog barked twice, then stopped. Her name is Jessica, he said finally. She's a nurse at Mercy. Was my patient last spring after a running injury. We started talking about training plans, and then he stopped, started again. It wasn't supposed to happen. It never is. I don't know how to explain it. Then don't. I pulled my knees up to my chest, wrapped my arms around them. I saw the messages. I saw the maps. I know you weren't running for stress relief. You were running to her. He covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry. For which part? For doing it or for me finding out? He didn't answer. Maybe there wasn't an answer. Maybe the distinction didn't matter anymore. Do you love her? I asked. He lowered his hands, looked at me. I don't know. Do you love me? Yes. No hesitation. Yes, I do. Then why? I don't know that either. His voice broke slightly. I know that's not good enough. I know that doesn't excuse anything. But I swear to you, I don't know how it started or when it became something I couldn't stop. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to rewind to September, to the first morning I heard him leave, and ask the questions I should have asked before silence became complicity. Instead, I sat very still and said, I want you to leave. Now? Not tonight. Soon. This week. I need you to find somewhere else to stay while I figure out what happens next. He nodded. Okay. And I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. Not tonight, but soon. I need to understand what I missed, what I ignored, what parts of this I should have seen. Okay. We sat there in the quiet that followed honesty. The house settled around us. The refrigerator hummed. The heat kicked on, that familiar mechanical breath. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. No one ever does. He moved out on January 2nd, packed 2 suitcases and a duffel bag with the same careful attention he brought to everything. clothes folded, toiletries organized, running shoes tucked into a separate compartment. He didn't take much. Most of his life was still here, pressed into closets and drawers and the small spaces we'd shared for so long they'd become indistinguishable from my own. The house felt larger without him. Not empty. It was too full of his absence for that, but spacious in a way that made every sound echo differently. I walked through rooms and noticed things I'd stopped seeing. The chip in the kitchen counter from when we'd dropped the cutting board. The water stain on the ceiling from the leak we'd never properly fixed. The photograph from our wedding tucked into the corner of the bathroom mirror. Our faces young and certain of futures we couldn't imagine yet. I kept working, kept moving through shifts at the hospital, kept answering when people asked if I was okay with variations of fine that nobody believed, but everyone accepted. At night, I'd open the fitness app. His green dot was still there, still running, still tracking routes through the city, but now the paths were different. They started from a different address, wherever he was staying. They still ended at the Willows. Some mornings he'd run there directly. No pretense anymore. No loops designed to look innocent. I watched this for 2 weeks before I deleted the app. In February, we met for coffee. Neutral territory, a cafe neither of us had ever been to, the kind of place designed for difficult conversations, quiet, corners, soft lighting, servers who understood when to leave people alone. He'd stopped posting his runs on Instagram. I'd noticed that first. The documentation of his discipline had vanished the same week he moved out, as if the performance had only made sense in the context of our shared home. I ended it, he said, with Jessica 2 weeks ago. I didn't know if I believed him. I didn't know if it mattered. Why? Because it wasn't real. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup, just like he used to with the blue mug in our kitchen. Because I built it on lies and stolen time and the version of myself that only existed for an hour in the morning. Because, he paused, because I missed you. You missed the idea of me, the wife who didn't ask questions, the life that let you have both. That's not fair. None of this is fair, David. We sat with that truth for a while. Around us, other people were having different conversations. Job interviews, first dates, study sessions, the ordinary human theater of connection and disconnection. Do you want to try again? He asked finally. I'd thought about this question every day since he left. Rehearsed different answers, imagined different futures. Some where I said yes, some where I said no, most where I said something in between that meant I still didn't know. I don't know if I can trust you, I said. I don't know if you can trust yourself. I understand. I don't think you do, I leaned forward. You ran toward someone else every morning while I was home believing you were running toward yourself. You documented fake routes on social media while the real ones led somewhere I wasn't invited. You came home and showered and sat down to breakfast like nothing had changed while everything had. I know. And the worst part is that some version of you loved me through all of it. You still made coffee, still asked about my shifts, still reached for me in bed some nights. I don't know which version was real. Both, he said quietly. Both were real. That's what makes it so horrible. Maybe he was right. Maybe people contain multitudes, contradictions, the capacity to love and harm simultaneously. Maybe marriage isn't about merging into one person, but learning to hold space for both. Or maybe that's just what we tell ourselves when the alternative is too painful to accept. It's May now. The trees have leaves again. The morning light comes earlier, warming the city before most people wake. David lives alone in a studio apartment in the Fairmount neighborhood. We talk sometimes, careful conversations about logistics and paperwork and what happens next. The divorce papers sit on my kitchen table, unsigned, gathering dust while I decide if I want to become someone whose marriage ended because her husband learned to run. I drive past the Willows sometimes. Not on purpose exactly, but I don't avoid it either. I wonder if Jessica still lives there. I wonder if she knows he ended it, or if that's another story he told to make himself feel better. I wonder if she ever saw his Instagram posts and recognized the routes that didn't include her. Mostly I wonder if she knows what it feels like to be the place someone runs to, if she understands that arrival and destination are different things, and that the man who sprinted toward her every Tuesday and Thursday was really just running away from something else. I haven't started running. I probably never will. But some mornings I walk, long, aimless loops through the neighborhood that take me past places I'd forgotten existed. I notice things now. The way the light catches on windows, the sound of sprinklers on summer lawns, the couple on Ashland who wave from their porch, the old man who walks his terrier at 6 a.m. every day, rain or shine. Last week, I saw David. He was at the grocery store, the same one I'd driven to that November evening before heading to the Willows. We stood in the produce section, separated by mounds of apples, and made small talk about nothing. The weather, work, the Phillies season. He looked thinner, tired, like someone who'd gained endurance but lost something heavier in the exchange. "How are you doing?" he asked. "Really?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Ask me in a year." He nodded, picked up a bag of apples, put it back down. "I think about you a lot, about us." "I know." "Do you think—" He stopped, started again. "Do you think people can come back from this?" I looked at him across the apples, this man I'd shared a house with, a bed with, 14 years of ordinary moments that added up to a life. I thought about all the mornings he'd left while I stayed. I thought about the green dot on the map, the messages I'd read, the careful construction of a world I wasn't part of. "I think some people do," I said. "I think some distances are worth running back from." "And us?" I picked up the apples he'd put down, added them to my basket. "I think you need to figure out why you ran in the first place, and I need to figure out why I didn't chase you." We said goodbye in the parking lot. He headed west, I headed east. The morning was bright and clean and full of possibility, the way mornings are when you've stopped pretending you know how they'll end. There's a question people never ask but should. What happens after the wound? After the revelation, the confrontation, the careful dismantling of what was? What happens in the space between hurt and healing, when you're not drowning anymore but haven't learned to swim? I'm learning that love doesn't vanish when trust breaks. It changes shape, becomes something different, sharper maybe, or softer, or simply quieter. It exists in the memory of blue mugs and chipped handles, in the muscle memory of folding someone else's clothes, in the hollow ache of waking to a house that's only yours. I'm learning that betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives on running shoes, one morning at a time, dressed up as self-improvement. I'm learning that forgiveness isn't a decision you make once. It's something you choose or don't choose every day, every hour, every time you remember what it felt like to watch a green dot stop moving at an address you'd never been. And I'm learning that endings are rarely clean. They're messy and incomplete and full of days when you miss someone you can't trust and trust yourself even less for missing them. The divorce papers are still on my table. Maybe I'll sign them. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll spend another 6 months in this liminal space between married and not, together and apart, certain and unsure. What I know for sure is this. He ran toward someone else every morning, and I watched him go, and we both called it something it wasn't until we couldn't anymore. The rest is just distance we're still measuring,